Hi everyone. I wanted to thank people for taking time to watch the video about how AI art erases creators with disabilities and for providing me with your experiences. There were many people who provided me with their personal experiences and thoughts on the matter, as well as two users who very thoughtfully pointed out that I used ableist language at one point in the video unintentionally when I said that Matisse had been wheelchair bound. Thank you for pointing that out, and I'm trying to either re-record and just that section and upload a new audio file, which is giving me trouble. If that doesn't work, I will simply just cut out that very particular moment. But in the future, I will make sure not to use that language, and I do appreciate for having it pointed out. Now, as some of you know, I'm a bit of an oddball. I am an opera singer. I'm also a composer, and I do a lot of second life performance because I like to bring the joy of opera to people. But I also like doing video essays on several subjects. It's something I hadn't really thought about starting up, but it's ideas that have been in my mind for a long time. The first thing that I published this year was Retro on the Edge of Forever. And if you haven't watched that one, you might want to take a look at it. You might find that you agree or disagree with some of the views posted there about our current state of the world. But there are more videos coming up. There is a follow-up video, which is called The Ethics of AI, and tackles the question of whether there is any ethical usage of AI or not. Now, just like with this video, the most recent video, I want you to not come with any assumptions as to what my argument is going to be. I always encourage people to watch the full videos so that you can see the full of my argument, the pros and cons that I present, because most of the time it might not be what you think. So there's also, after that, there's going to be finally, those of you who have been following the cursor situation, an update, because a fifth client has now been exposed as having had his information divulged by Leanna Kirshner. And that video will also include, at last, the big ugly fight. Then there's a video that I'm going to, a video series I'm going to update frequently called Cool Stuff Asher Makes, because I want to start showcasing some of the really cool stuff that Asher's been working on. And the first thing I'm going to talk about is bottom-driven semantic monotonicity, a theory of computation, which I know sounds very dense, but trust me, you're going to find it fascinating. Then I'm going to do a series on books, because there are two books that I believe are incredibly important for us. Well, three books, but two books pertaining to the AI situation. And the first one is Momo by Michael Ende, who was the author of The Never-Ending Story, or Die Unendliche Geschichte. And trust me, if you've seen the movie, you've only scratched the surface, because the book is much larger, longer, and an infinitely better experience. If you loved the movie, pick up the book. Trust me on that. But Momo by Michael Ende and Biting the Sun by Tanith Lee are two books that I think are incredibly relevant and have things to say about the AI situation nowadays. And there's also going to be another thing. It's going to be an essay about the value of art. And it's going to be couched in the message of the musical Sunday in the Park with George by Stephen Sondheim. Now, if you've never seen this musical, it's definitely an experience. I think it's a gorgeous musical, but I think that the message that it portrays is timeless and wonderful. Now, there was also another question added about ethics. A user pointed out that when I said that it was a black and white ethical question as to whether the models had been trained unethically or not, he brought into question the point that I acted as if there were objective ethics. And I do want to make a video about ethics. And actually, I'm going to tie it to video games because you see, this is going to be a bit of a spoiler, but there was a very important video game in the 80s that came out that kind of has affected how RPGs have been conceived since then. Anytime anyone wants to tackle alignment and morality, and I'm not talking about Dungeons and Dragons, no. But the ethics video is going to dovetail into that one because, well, you'll see. Now, I want to look at some of the feedback that we received. Unfortunately, I can't showcase all of it, but I wanted to pick up a few things here and there, and I want to make sure that the user is quoted respectfully because I don't want to put words in other people's mouths. So when they post something, I'm not going to assume that you mean something else, rather that I will quote your very exact words and I will address those words. So, the first thing is that Pac-Man 2321 presents a very good argument here. And it's something that I've noticed quite a bit regarding these AI bros and those arguments, that the notion of disability is kind of portrayed as universal incompetence instead of a very specific need for a particular support or affordances. And that is something that a lot of people don't quite grasp. And so when the argument that AI art helps artists with disabilities, it is leaning heavily into that, because as we saw in some of the examples I showed, you can make art with most disabilities. Of course, there are instances in which that is impossible. And I'm going to bring something up to another user called the examples that I posted inspiration porn. And I want to make one thing very clear insofar as what these videos do. First of all, I am not telling you that you must do this or that. I'm telling you what the perspective that I have is, and the reasons I have for coming to the conclusion that I have come to. So, if, for example, you do have a disability that leaves you mostly immobile or unable to draw with your hands, etc., I'm not prescribing a course of action for you. Rather, if you take to the argument that I presented, I am telling you that looking at the evidence of how these models work, what is coming out is not really your output. It's not really you. It contains very little that is yours because it makes choices for you, or rather it doesn't make choices for you. It aggregates from a statistical sampling. On that point, though, I want to bring something up that I forgot. My tutic shared that they have Ehlers-Danlos and autism, and they also experience chronic pain and otherwise difficulty with movement. And they still do a lot of visual arts. And I appreciate them sharing their personal experience. One thing I wanted to bring up that this reminded me of is, and I really should have featured this as an example, especially since I'm an opera singer, but I guess it slipped my mind, is that Maria Callas, arguably the greatest soprano of the 20th century, and the woman who essentially codified the persona of the operatic diva, most likely had Ehlers-Danlos. And yet she essentially didn't just carve a path for herself in history, she kind of burned her way through. I'm not going to go deeply into that, but I do suggest that you go and look at this channel, Phantoms of the Opera, which is a fascinating channel. And there is a video about Maria Callas. And fair point here, this is not purely just speculation, idle speculation. The singer, the opera singer who owns that channel and who makes these videos, was also diagnosed herself with Ehlers-Danlos. And looking through her symptomology and the constellation of different symptoms that make up Ehlers-Danlos, she came to the conclusion that Maria Callas most likely had Ehlers-Danlos herself. Also, Fishy FLCL mentioned that Shiro Kotobuki is an awesome artist, and yes, you should definitely go and check out Shiro's art. User Anophis pointed out that there are many different tools such as Clarion that can help musicians with disabilities create their own music, and it's definitely worth looking into. And Blue Alaris correctly pointed out that I had missed a step in my writing talking about these models. Yes, these LLMs do not generate the art themselves. They send the prompt over to Midjourney or DALL-E. I was so focused on how Diffusion works that I forgot to mention that part of the chain. Now, I do apologize if I can't look at all of your comments or bring them up, because the way YouTube handles comments is just absolutely terrible. There was a user who mentioned that if my face were visible, he would have stayed longer than 3 minutes. And that's totally fair game. I have made videos with my face before, but to be honest, the setup to get everything going is just not going to happen. I just don't have the time as it is. As you can see, I'm already pressed for time making these videos because they come out at a longer rate than usually they would. I am in the middle of repairs in the apartment because some damage was caused by weather, and so that's causing me a lot of slowdown. But even then, the whole notion of setting up the ring light and making the environment look pretty non-chaotic, because, you know, there's painting stuff around and music stuff around, that you really want to not crowd the frame too much and set up the green screen. It's just not going to happen. Not if I'm going to keep composing and making games and things of that, and performing. So, unfortunately, you're kind of stuck with my PNG tuber. And there was someone who did call it a low-effort PNG tuber, and you're right. I'm currently using just basically a talking animation. I am working on a more complex one, but again, with everything, that also has gotten slowed down. But should be able to debut pretty soon. Crossing fingers, right? User no name is R4CO. Did mention they were a writer, and actually I would love to read some of their writing based on how they portrayed the art of writing and how it contains elements of a person's personality, who they are at that time, that I think are incredibly important. Because again, those are the things that get erased with LLMs when you have your text generated by someone else. Because, as they say, it is not the final product, but the everything that went into it. Every piece that you write or draw or compose is an expression of all that you have ever learned and have yet to learn. It is you, wholly, completely, wonderfully, and wretchedly you. And that's true. And if books and if writing were not, as this user has so beautifully expressed, that sort of communion would be impossible. Even now, when I read the letters and emails and texts of my mother, who has now been gone for 10 years, that moment of time where she set pen to paper or hands to keyboard and wrote very specific words in very specific choices, they are an indelible fingerprint of who she was and what she thought and felt at that time. And even though she's gone, that part of her remains. And in a way, it is kind of absolutely magical. And letting AI write for her would have meant that none of that not a single part of that essence would have been preserved. It's a plain 4262. I love that username. Pointed out what they view as the reason for the fundamental odds between AI generators and artists, and it boils down to the intrinsic value of art. Now, I'm going to talk about the value of art. I am not an intrinsicist, but that doesn't mean that art doesn't have value. I will explain what my position is on that in that video about the value of art coming up. But this is a very good comment, so I wanted to show it too. So that goes for the feedback section. Now, as promised, I'm going to show you a piece I composed over the last 2 days because I fell down a rabbit hole. I've been moving boxes and moving furniture out of the way because we had to pack stuff up to get it out of the way of the damage, and even some things we had to send to a storage unit. So I'm just beat at the end of the day, and then I sit down to compose. And now you saw that a couple of days ago I did the Uses of Enchantment as a choral piece. And there was something about that piece that made me think. And then I realized I can expand this, but it shouldn't be a choral piece just by itself. So, because I still have the intention of that choral piece to open the album, the Uses of Enchantment. And then I started arranging it for strings, and I originally thought this is going to be a nice, string quartet sort of setting, violin section, 1, 2, viola, and cello. And it was just going to be a straight setting of it. And it did not end up being that straightforward, because then I started adding material and changing things. And then a violin soloist came out of the blue in my mind towards the final section. So now what you have here is essentially a fantasia concertante based on that theme. This happens all the time. Sometimes an idea just jumps at you and you have to capture it before it escapes you. And it, just like following the white rabbit, it can lead you down interesting steps. So here, without further ado, is the Uses of Enchantment, the Fantasia Concertante for violin solo and string section version. Enjoy. Oh, and one thing. Please forgive the engraving. It looks like shit, but there are several things that I need to finagle when I create these videos because the sound fonts in MuseScore are very touchy, and so you're going to see some very extreme dynamics listed there, like pianissimo. Ignore them. When I publish for real-life performers, they will actually have appropriate markings, but I have to do some of these things to get the sound fonts to behave the way I want them to. So, in any case, here it goes.